I'm bored.
Get off, you piece of... Oh, look at me. I just took a box for a phone that's from like 6 years ago, filled it up with water, and closed the lid, and now it's getting all soaking wet. Isn't this just the pinnacle of comedy, people? Aren't I the most funny person on the planet?
Today's video is top 10 water levels.
One thing that we, as organic beings, need to come to terms with is that we'll forever be submissive bitches to the element of water. We need to drink it to survive. Only a very specific portion of water on Earth you can drink without keeling over. Aquatic-related deaths are always slow and painful. It's in the very air we breathe. About 115% of our bodies are comprised of water, and in some belief systems, if you don't get splashed with water, apparently you burn in hell for all eternity. Cats hate water, so that should tell you how bad it is. Oh, and worst of all, it seeps into video games all the fucking time, and many levels that it infects tend to be very, very dumb. I don't think I need to go too deep into why water levels have a bit of a negative stigma. I mean, it ain't exactly unfounded. Surprisingly, portions of a game that completely alter the physics and maybe even give you an entirely new control scheme to work with often don't mesh particularly well with the rest of a given title. That's not to say it's impossible to do a water level right, it's just, you know, a lot of them aren't done right. In a case like this, it's important to highlight good examples of this level theme as opposed to just regurgitating the same negative points for the 1000th time. I've enjoyed a fair amount of water levels, so here's a video for the 5 people who actually watch my shit. Or more specifically, the 2 people out of those 5 who actually found this video in their sub box.
Hey, if you guys could hit that bell icon, I'd really appreciate it.
You can't go wrong with talking about Metroid Prime, am I right? Peekaboo, 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 peekaboo.
I'm just gonna act like I didn't see any of that.
Prime 1 specifically begins with Samus investigating a space pirate frigate called the Orpheon, killing a large monstrosity called the Parasite Queen, who I'm guessing infested the frigate with offspring who she just let run around unsupervised. Watch your kids, you lazy bitch. I'm bringing this up since the result of the Parasite family massacre is the ship melting down and crashing on the surface of Talon 4. A decent way further into Metroid Prime, Samus eventually does visit the Orpheon crash site where the frigate is damn near completely submerged in the water. Call me crazy, but I think the Orpheon may have seen better days. Nothing that a little flex tape can't fix, but still. Navigating through the remains of a place that you first visited in a damaged, albeit fully operational state provides a great amount of intrigue the second time around. The entire frigate is pretty much completely deactivated now, with only tiny traces of power remaining for the defense turrets and doors. Exploring the crash site feels like you're going on sort of a scuba diving expedition, searching through every room and crevice of the ship and seeing what's become of the game's opening area. Extra details like Mommy of the Year Parasite Queen's corpse make it clear how much extra care was put into replicating the ship's look, while giving your second visit a different feel. You can also get a pretty good idea of how the passage of time is already taking effect on the ship, with aquatic life beginning to inhabit the remains and space pirates in the water searching through their downed spacecraft, probably to salvage and scavenge all that they're able to. The whole location makes brilliant usage of your thermal visor and wave beam to navigate your way through and figure out what Samus can still turn on in a non-sexual context. Orpheon is shorter than basically all other areas in Metroid Prime, but it's really fun for its duration, and that's all I can really ask from it. I'm a self-admitted slut for insanely good water effects, so there's a high probability I might be genetically related to the Miiverse water guy. I'd be the kind of person who finds a pool or stream in a game like Uncharted and splashes around in it for minutes on end. Hey, there's no shame in acknowledging when you're a simple man who's easy to please. Though don't expect Chapter 15 of Uncharted 3 to let you do that a whole lot, since you'll probably drown and encounter Cuntburger from the first Uncharted a second time, and Nobody wants that. The water looks pretty, but it'll kill you. All is forgiven, however, because Sink or Swim is a really fun chapter. Previous events in the game lead to Nate stowing away and getting caught on some giant cruise ship out in the middle of the ocean, and Sink or Swim is comprised of the daring escape. Since the chapter literally begins with the grenade blasting a hole into the boat, causing it to flood, rip whatever vacation you may have been having. Because nobody bothered to bring some goddamn flex tape onto the boat before setting sail, the cruise ship starts to fill up fast and you've got to get moving. The whole sequence is thrilling set piece after thrilling set piece of Nate trying to not get swept away, all of which have their own unique element. One moment you're pinned to the ground and trying to escape a completely submerged room, while at another you're running away from the large and strong inflow of water gradually engulfing the ship. And hey, when water isn't what's trying to kill you, you can still count on goons to try and do it themselves. Including this guy who tries to take you down with him to a watery grave, which works about as well as literally every other goon that's tried to kill the main protagonist in every piece of media in all creation. When will dumb henchmen learn? Each segment is broken up by brief, calm periods that give you just enough time to catch your breath and let the player cool down a bit, but still convey an "oh fuck, gotta move" vibe. It's a really well-paced chapter that knows just when to thrust the player into danger and to ease back a bit. Even the bit where you're going through the ship on its side is pretty cool. Climbing up the tilted bedrooms with the use of their doors was a really clever sequence, and the part where the camera pans out to show the entire ship as it's going down is quite imposing, not gonna lie. Definitely one of the biggest highlights of Uncharted 3. Hell, I'd argue the entire series. Crash Bandicoot is a pussy-ass bitch. It's no wonder he got friend-zoned for a mob boss when everything on the planet instantly kills him without some spirit mask guy protecting him. Having his boxers exposed and kissing a frog who turned out to be another dude apparently embarrasses him quite literally to death, and the mere simple act of making contact with semi-deep water, not even for a prolonged time, causes him to drown after about 5 seconds.
He may not be the hero we need or want, but he's sure as hell the hero we all deserve.
So yeah, dude needs scuba gear to avoid drowning like the pussy he is. On the plus side though, the levels it's used in were pretty sweet. My favorite is Deep Trouble. Admittedly, I don't really get what time period this level is supposed to be set in, which is kind of odd for this game, but I immediately lose all shits to give because pretty graphics. Whether it be the PS1 Classic or the Insane Trilogy Remaster, the environment is so colorful and packed full of oceanic plants and fish. The objectives are essentially the same as any normal level in the game. Get crystal, break boxes, get gem, get laid, and then leave. Though the underwater setting means the way it all plays out significantly differs from most other levels in the game. The stage is slower and emphasizes more precise movement and timing, considering it's packed with a billion things that'll kill you. Mines, electric doohickeys, whirlpool jets, pufferfish, eels, and, of course, sharks. Because what hazardous oceanic environment would be complete without unrealistically aggressive sharks? Normally, I would not be a fan of levels or mechanics playing out this way compared to the rest of the game, but something about Deep Trouble in particular just clicks with me. After the previous water level, Under Pressure, introduced the central mechanics and gave the player the room they need to get accustomed to it all, Deep Trouble provides a bigger challenge, with the obstacles showing up sooner and more frequently. In addition, that torpedo-shooting submarine is seriously badass. I could never physically replicate the shit-eating grin I had on my face when it showed up as soon as the level even started. It's by no means the most exciting level in Warped, but above everything else, it's just really relaxing. I get sucked right into the atmosphere whenever I visit the stage, especially with that soothing ambient background music. It does a pretty spot-on job getting you to just kick back, enjoy the tour, and soak all the pretty scenery in. Unless it's time trial, which, in that case, fuck all those stupid graphics and hurry your ass to the finish line. Sometimes, instead of just putting one level underwater, you'll get a psychotic sadist who gets the vile idea of setting the entire video game underwater, giving birth to such titles like Echo the Dolphin and Jaws: Sonic: The Force Unleashed. On a more positive note, sometimes there's that one guy who decides, hey, maybe I can make a game underwater that's not a piece of shit. And that's how Abzu was born. At least I think that's how it went. I can't say for sure since I wasn't there when the game was made.
And I suppose somebody could question why I put an entire game on here instead of just a level, but Abzu's only about an hour long and it's not even that high, so whatever, who cares?
There's a lot that somebody could dissect just from this one game, with the entire experience being strung along through visual storytelling that's vague about the world you're in and what you're doing in it, for the purpose of letting you construct your own perspective on what the hell you just went through. It won't be appealing to everyone, but I can tell you what will. Pretty as fuck graphics. Abzu has a very simplistic art style, but the dumb idiot who thinks that's inherently bad can go drink out of a can with a broken tab. The entire game is an absolute treat for the eyes with not a single dull square inch of anything in sight. The green kelp forests that allow sunlight to peek through, the dark mysterious depths of the ocean, the imposing red machinery, even the empty areas with only sand and water are beautiful. Sure, the game may not technically look realistic, but boy howdy does it feel that way. I mean, just look at all this fish and undersea plant life. The best description I could use for this game is picturing what would happen if Finding Nemo met Fantasia. The whole Abzu experience is mesmerizing, and the natural buttery smooth movement certainly plays a major role in this. If nothing else, it's a nice way to settle down and relieve stress while flying through a virtual ocean, latching onto a giant fish, and even swimming alongside a pod of whales. It feels therapeutic in a way, and incorporating hints of a world with futuristic machinery, and possibly the remains of what could have been a long-gone civilization is a nice extra touch. It all makes the setting feel a lot more layered and allows for your imagination to construct what could have possibly gone on here. The game gave me a lot to chew on after the fact, and I doubt it's gonna leave my mind anytime soon. With water levels having a frequent association with slow and sluggish game feel, and Sonic games in stark contrast being based around going fast, incorporating the former into the latter probably seems like a bad idea. So this naturally means that Sonic Team loves to shoehorn water levels every opportunity they get, and probably goes without saying that 9 times out of 10 they royally fuck it up. It's like getting a blind man to play darts. Not only does he constantly miss, but he's probably not even facing the direction of the board, and more than likely poked somebody's eye out with the dart. Single-handedly creating the musical equivalent of a panic attack doesn't help either. As for good Sonic water levels, I mean, Aquarium Park was pretty not horrible. First thing of note is that the whole slow, restricted movement thing is pretty much negated by the presence of your boost ability. Why tediously slog through the water when you can just blast your way through with little resistance? Or hell, even run on top of the water like Jesus, or dash from that one scene in The Incredibles. You know, I think I just figured out the Holy Trinity.
Really, Jesus is actually the father, everybody mixes that part up. Dash is the son because he is just a boy, and Sonic is the Holy Spirit because Sega murdered him.
Crazy theories aside, each act of Aquarium Park is an absolute joy for a number of other reasons. The theme of the level is obviously that of an aquarium, hence the name, but that's only part of it as the locale has this kind of Japanese garden motif, albeit taken to a cartoonishly over-the-top extreme. Not only is it a pretty clever fusion of two completely different themes, but the Japanese architecture and robotic fish are a gorgeous contrast to everything naturally there. Keep in mind that you can still drown, but it's hard to get worked up about that when your regular double jump is unlimited while you're submerged, and it's not too much trouble to get air before the anxiety clock reaches 0. Plus, in addition to the boost mechanic, Aquarium Park makes really clever use of the wisp abilities. Probably the most out of any stage in Sonic Colors. The drill lets you swim in any direction at any angle while submerged, with the added benefit of not suffocating to death if the damn thing decides to fuck fuck off, and the rocket sends you hurtling up in the air to skydiving segments that a trail of rings cleverly lead you to. The level is full of subtle design choices like that reinforce how much care and thought was put into how everything would mesh together. If the multiple pathways above land and below water didn't convey that enough already. In a nutshell, if Sonic's water levels are like a blind guy playing darts, Aquarium Park is the blind guy not only hitting the dartboard, but landing a fucking bullseye. I don't typically hate water dungeons from Zelda as strongly as other people seem to, but I can see clear as day where all the criticism comes from. Confusing layout, underwater navigation being an ungodly pain in the ass, really underwhelming and poorly used items, shit boss battles. These dungeons feel like everyone involved was sleepwalking through the development process and figured, who gives a flying fuck if this part is fun or not? It works, you can beat it, I'm done, where's my paycheck? Or at least whatever that translates to in Japanese. I'm not exactly fluent with that language. The only water dungeons that actually managed to keep me awake are the Lakebed Temple, which was okay, and the Ancient Cistern, which is actually fucking incredible. It already distinguishes itself from your typical shitty water dungeon by having actual color instead of a billion ugly drab gray shades. We've got this ornate decorative structure that resembles a Buddhist temple, at least on the dungeon's top half. The lower half contrasts quite a bit with a dark, more sinister color palette that comes off as tainted, unlike the vibe of purity the upper half gives off. Your only company down there is that of zombies and giant spiders, so have fun shitting yourself. On top of this, the whole Buddhist thing isn't only prevalent in pretty visuals, but also thematics. The upper and lower levels of the dungeon respectively give off auras of good and evil, which could tie into heaven and hell, yin and yang, or really anything that implies some kind of balance between two opposites. The amount of theming incorporated into the Ancient Cistern is really cool and elevates an otherwise fun dungeon into being one of the best the franchise has ever had. But it wouldn't be that way on motifs alone if it wasn't well designed as a dungeon. For once, you can actually maneuver around in water pretty intuitively, since Link can actually swim normally without bullshit like mandatory iron boots, currents that throw you across the room, or just plain god-awful controls. Introduced here is the whip, one of the more unique items from a Zelda game. With the Ancient Cistern essentially being your introduction to said item, the dungeon makes great use of it to show off how versatile it really is in both combat and puzzle solving. Also, the end boss battle against Galactos is, like, fucking amazing. You rip the bastard's arms off and cut him to ribbons with a giant sword. That's some Metal Gear Rising level shit right there, and Skyward Sword came out just over a year before that game. I would love to see this kind of thing done with Breath of the Wild's game engine. Apparently, after an entire trilogy of 2D platformers and one 3D game where the DK crew is able to swim in water, Donkey Kong Country Returns decides, nope, monkeys are too dumb to swim, so drown those idiots if they ever touch water. 4 years later, Tropical Freeze drops in and goes, bitch, you're the dumb one, and gives our primate pals their swimming powers back, along with an entire world full of levels to swim through. It seems as if Rare's knack for great water levels in Donkey Kong Country was picked up on by Retro, since World 4 ended up being quite possibly my favorite in Tropical Freeze. Of the stages in World 4, Abyss is the definite pick for my favorite. What does it say when, of all things, a dark level gets a spot this high up on the list? Probably the Retro Studios made it work without making the level's main gimmick amount to help I can't see shit.
Now, this might be hard for some of you to take in, so you might want to sit down. Contrary to the thought process of the guys that made Suicide Squad and Alien vs. Predator 2, people really don't like not being able to see what's on screen. Doesn't this just make you want to die?
Abyss making the foreground a nearly pitch-black silhouette with the occasional bits of vibrant color, and the background still dim but visibly contrasted by different shades of blue, on top of looking absolutely breathtaking, is a clever way of making the player always able to see where they're going. Every aesthetic choice isn't just made for the sole purpose of scenery decoration, but to have some function in relation to the gameplay, whether it be purple to communicate that touching something something will hurt you, illuminated areas that highlight a safe path for you to navigate through, or even just solid flat color to notify you where DK and whatever other Kong you have is at, without blending into the ground silhouettes and getting lost. The foreground also incorporates a number of hidden areas and secrets that aren't totally obvious at first glance, but easy enough to spot when you notice subtle hints within the shapes that make up the level. The swimming controls are smooth enough to play through this stage with the same amount of finesse as you'd be able to in the normal stages. I know that can be said for basically any instance when you're underwater in Tropical Freeze, but it works there, it works here, so I will praise whenever people do a good. One has to be curious as to how the folks at Retro got so good at making video games. They combined two of the most hated level tropes out there and actually made it work. Could they make a good wind-based level next? You know what would be cool? Free healthcare. Also, if Disney would just rehire James Gunn already. And also, if underwater segments put more emphasis on how you get an increased range of movement. I mean, because reality's laws of physics let you swim anywhere you want to when in a pool or something, even if the rules of the pool forbid it and the lifeguard yells at you for being a dumbass, it'd make sense that in a video game you'd have, say, an entirely new axis of movement to work with in a 3D platformer. And yeah, a lot of games let you swim in any direction underwater, but I don't really see the level design utilize it in that meaningful of a way a lot of the time. Well, at least nowhere near as much as Aquaria Towers from Spyro 2 does. The central premise of the level is that all of the water somehow got sucked out of this place and every one of the inhabitants is probably going to die slowly and painfully. Your objective is to bring back water to their home, but considering the place is also full of metal sharks, electric traps within the buildings that people probably go to stay in, and giant enemy crabs that attack on sight, your effort probably meant nothing at all, and all those things will likely kill everyone instead.
Yeah, Spyro, good job solving one insignificant problem in the world and doing fuck all to help with the other billion aside from senseless killing. You'd be a great president.
Most of the level segments are normally blocked off from access until you raise the water level to a height where you can press on. It's a clever method of conveying the path that you need to take for the main objective, based around what areas are full of water, dry, or reachable via jumping. It's designed in a way where you're ultimately making your way upwards, and the water filling up the level is the means in which the player makes their progress to the top. It's really satisfying when you flip that last switch and fill the entire level with water, since you're given absolute free range to explore and move through the level, even getting to a new set of side objectives through a hole at the top. Since both objectives pretty much require the entire level to be submerged, their placement in an area that's inaccessible without beating the main part cleverly keeps it out of reach so the player doesn't get stuck or break the game or something. It makes it so the blocked access is less like the game won't let me do this yet, and more like I just couldn't get there. Probably not that huge a thing, but hey, cool little tidbit that makes the level more immersive and adds a bit of extra polish. You can bet your ass I'm looking forward to playing through this level again later this month. Guess I'll finish up 2 games in my backlog, and then add another 20 or so to it. It is bizarre to think that Mario Odyssey isn't too far away from being 1 year old. At this rate, I'm gonna grow old and die a lot faster than I originally thought I would.
With my luck, that's probably gonna happen before they even give release dates to Death Stranding and that Final Fantasy VII remake.
But back on track, most water levels from Mario titles are actually pretty damn sweet, so I was hoping that Odyssey would also have something special to offer in that regard. Then some creative bastard took my expectations and disintegrated them into dust as if the game was developed by Thanos or somebody like that. What I'm getting at is that the Lake Kingdom is a thing of beauty. The level setting definitely seems to break away from typical Mario conventions. It kinda feels like Super Mario's take on a Zora's Domain-like world with a few other similarities to the Gungan City Kenobi in Star Wars The Phantom Menace. Ancient Greek-like architecture, a bunch of clear air domes that keep out water, waifu fish ladies with extremely well-manicured fingernails. It's quite the imaginative locale, I gotta say. Especially for a level trip that the series has utilized several times in the past, even making it the basis for entire games on occasion. The color palette throughout the Lake Kingdom looks quite a bit like a watercolor painting, where the more dim and washed out visual style, along with the delightfully serene piano score, evokes the kind of feeling one would get from waking up early in the morning and going out for a swim. Just without freezing your ass off when first getting into the water, and being grumpy because you haven't had your morning cup of coffee yet. The stone columns having dress skirts carved into them is a nice touch, and the light refraction by the main dome is some really impressive shit. Also, the level is very sparkly. Just looking at the sunlight glimmer off the landscape and water ripples is enough to keep me stimulated for as long as need be. Admittedly, the underwater swimming controls are less intuitive than previous 3D Marios, but hey, you can possess the mind and body of a Cheep and get around here just fine, so boo fuckity hoo. Also, yeah, all the moon challenges are a joy to do and go all out with every inch of this elegant, whimsical setting. It was one of my favorite worlds to explore during the main story, and I definitely anticipated my return to do all of the endgame stuff. A few months ago, I played through a game called Rayman Legends developed by Ubisoft. You know, that Ubisoft. It was fun. Not a whole lot notable about the game other than it being one of the best platformers I have ever played in my life. It's not every day that I sit down and binge a game to 100% completion. It's also not every day that I see a game right in the middle just up and decide, you know, I'm gonna turn into BioShock for a bit. That sounds like fun. And fun it absolutely is. The world in question is 20,000 Lums Under the Sea, and by far the best world in Legends, which is not something that you can say lightly. The most bizarre thing about this world isn't even the game basically taking you on a trip through Rapture, and it ain't that dumbfuck pun that somebody decided to use as the name of the world either, but the fact that all the stages are a fusion of water level and stealth segment, two styles of gameplay that are notorious for being awful in platformers, and every level is goddamn amazing. Rayman's swimming controls are buttery smooth, retaining the same amount of agility and speed that you have on land. They may feel a bit loose at first, but they're easy to get accustomed to, and transition very nicely between normal land controls when you dive in or hop out of the water. I can't help but feel like some kind of secret agent stealthily infiltrating an enemy stronghold, staying out of the light, carefully maneuvering around some mines. It's a really fun premise that each stage does a lot to shake up. The aforementioned smooth controls and placement of obstacles ensure that anytime shit goes wrong for the player, it's their fault, and if they can't accept that fact, they're probably Darkside Phil.
Don't be a DSP.
Most of what you travel through is dark and full of stuff that'll kill you faster than EA kills every company they touch. Maybe it's a trap. Maybe it's some guy working down below for less than minimum wage. Maybe it's just nature being a dick. You might be James Bond, but you're still in a very dangerous place, which the game makes sure that you know with the beautiful visuals, lighting, and soundtrack that wouldn't be out of place for a Metal Gear game. It might be kind of a cop-out to just put a whole world on here instead of choosing one stage out of the bunch, but pretty much anything I could say about one stage applies to all subsequent others. They're all consistently good while having their own special quirks that let them stand distinctively from the others. One stage cleverly misleads you by starting out similar to the water levels in Origins. Another breaks linearity, taking you on multiple paths to break the locks off a door. Another is a really intense chase sequence, and another is an insanely addictive musical stage. Picking only one out of the brilliant selection here feels kind of unfair, you know? So I'm putting all of 21 Lums Under the Sea at the number 1 spot. I'll accept your formal complaints if you package them together with some flex tape.